Howdy, squirrels. I'm just sitting here praying that I'll be able to stay awake. I've been fighting it all day long instead of giving in and taking a nap. Don't know why I do that, because I want to be able to stitch. Okay, Chapter 7. When I got home, I found Mrs. Dane Calthrop sitting talking to Joanna. She looked, I thought, gray and ill. "This has been a terrible shock to me, Mr. Burton," she said. "Poor thing, poor thing." "Yes," I said, "it's awful to think of someone being driven to the stage of taking their own life." "Oh, you mean Mrs. Symington? Didn't you?" Mrs. Dane Calthrop shook her head. Of course one is sorry for her, but it would have been bound to happen anyway, wouldn't it?" "Would it?" said Joanna dryly. Mrs. Dane Calthrop turned to her. "Oh, I think so, dear. If suicide is your idea of escape from trouble, then it doesn't very much matter what the trouble is. Whenever some very unpleasant shock had to be faced, she'd have done the same thing. What it really comes down to is that she was that kind of woman. Not that one would have guessed it. She always seemed to me a selfish, rather stupid woman with a good firm hold on life. Not the kind to panic, you would think, but I'm beginning to realize how little I really know anyone." "I'm still curious as to whom you meant when you said poor thing," I remarked. She stared at me. "The woman who wrote the letters, of course." "I don't think," I said dryly, "I shall waste sympathy on her." Mrs. Dane Calthrop leaned forward. She laid a hand on my knee. "But don't you realize? Can't you feel? Use your imagination. Think how desperately, violently unhappy anyone must be to sit down and write these things. How lonely, how cut off from humankind, poisoned through and through with a dark stream of poison that finds its outlet in this way. That's why I feel so self-reproachful. Somebody in this town has been racked with that terrible unhappiness, and I've had no idea of it. I should have had. You can't interfere with actions, I never do, but that black inward unhappiness, like a septic arm, physically all black and swollen, if you could cut it and let the poison out. No. If you could cut it and let the poison out, it would flow away harmlessly. Yes, poor soul, poor soul." She got up to go. I did not feel like agreeing with her. I had no sympathy for our anonymous letter writer whatsoever, but I did ask curiously, "Have you any idea at all, Mrs. Calthrop, who this woman is?" She turned her fine, perplexed eyes on me. "Well, I can guess," she said, "but then I might be wrong, mightn't I?" She went swiftly out through the door, popping her head back to ask, "Do tell me, why have you never married, Mr. Burton?" In anyone else it would have been an impertinence, but with Mrs. Dane Calthrop you felt that the idea had suddenly come into her head and she had really wanted to know. "Shall we say," I said, rallying, "that I have never met the right woman?" "We can say so," said Mrs. Dane Calthrop, "but it wouldn't be a very good answer, because so many men have obviously married the wrong woman." This time she really departed, and Joanna said, "You know, I really do think she's mad, but I like her. The people in the village here are afraid of her. So am I, a little, because you never know what's coming next. Yes. And there's a careless brilliancy about her guesses." Joanna said slowly, "Do you really think whoever wrote these letters is very unhappy?" I don't know what the damned hag is thinking or feeling, and I don't care. It's her victims I'm sorry for. It seems odd to me now that in our speculations about poison pens frame of mind, we missed the most obvious one. Griffith had pictured her as possibly exultant. I had envisaged her as remorseful, appalled by the result of her handiwork. Mrs. Dane Calthrop had seen her as suffering. Yet the inevitable reaction we did not consider, or perhaps I should say I did not consider, that reaction was fear. For with the death of Mrs. Symington, the letters had passed out of one category into another. I don't know what the legal position was. Symington knew, I suppose, but it was clear that with the death resulting, the position of the writer of letters was much more seriously. There could be no question of passing it off as a joke if the identity of the writer was discovered. The police were active. A Scotland Yard expert called in. It was vital now for the anonymous author to remain anonymous. And granted that fear was the principal reaction, other things followed. Those possibilities also I was blind to, yet surely they should have been obvious. Part 2. Joanna and I came down rather late to breakfast the next morning, that is to say, late by the standards of Limstock. It was 9:30, an hour at which in London Joanna was just closing an eyelid, and mine would probably be still tight shut. However, when Partridge had said breakfast at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, neither Joanna nor I had the nerve to suggest a later hour. To my annoyance, Amy Griffith was standing on the doorstep talking to Megan. She gave tongue with her usual heartiness at the sight of us. "Hello there, slackers. I've been up for hours." That, of course, was her own business. A doctor, no doubt, has to have early breakfast, and a dutiful sister is there to pour out his tea or coffee, but it's no excuse for coming and butting in on one's more somnolent neighbors. 9:30 is not the time for a morning call. Megan slipped back into the house and into the dining room, where I gathered she had been interrupted in her breakfast. "I said I wouldn't come in," said Amy Griffith, though why, it is more of a merit to force people to come and speak to you on the doorstep than to talk to them inside the house. I do not know. I just wanted to ask Miss Burton if she'd any vegetables to spare for our Red Cross stall in the main road. If so, I'd get Owen to call for them in the car. "You're out and about very early," I said. "The early bird catches the worm," said Amy. "You have a better chance of finding people in this time of day. I'm off to Mr. Pye's next. Got to go over to Brenton this afternoon. Guides." "Your energy makes me quite tired," I said, and at that moment the telephone rang. Mine just dings. Let's see. Nothing. "Your energy makes me quite tired," I said, and at that moment the telephone rang, and I retired to the back of the hall to answer it, leaving Joanna murmuring rather doubtfully something about rhubarb and French beans and exposing her ignorance of the vegetable garden. "Yes," I said into the telephone mouthpiece. A confused noise of deep breathing came from the other end of the wire, and a doubtful female voice said, "Oh." "Yes," I said again encouragingly. "Oh," said the voice again, and then it inquired adenoidally, "Is that what I mean? Is that Little Furs?" "This is Little Furs." Oh, this was clearly a stock beginning to every sentence. The voice inquired cautiously, "Could I speak to Miss Partridge just a minute?" "Certainly," I said. "Who shall I say?" "Oh, tell her it's Agnes, would you? Agnes Waddell." "Agnes Waddell?" "That's right." Resisting the temptation to say, "Donald Duck to you," I put down the telephone receiver and called up the stairs to where I could hear the sound of Partridge's activities overhead. "Partridge! Partridge!" Partridge appeared at the head of the stairs, a long mop in one hand and a look of "What is it now?" clearly discernible behind her invariably respectful manner. "Yes, sir." "Agnes Waddell wants to speak to you on the phone." "I beg your pardon, sir." I raised my voice. "Agnes Waddell. I have spelt the name as it presented itself to my mind, but I will now spell it as it was actually written. Agnes Waddell. Whatever can she want now?" Or, I guess it's Waddell. Agnes Waddle. I don't know. Very much put out of countenance, Partridge relinquished her mop and rustled down the stairs, her print dress crackling with agitation. I beat an unobtrusive retreat into the dining room where Megan was wolfing down kidneys and bacon. Megan, unlike Amy Griffith, was displaying no glorious morning face. In fact, she replied very gruffly to my morning salutations and continued to eat in silence. I opened the morning paper, and a minute or two later, Joanna entered looking somewhat shattered. "Whew," she said, "I'm so tired, and I think I've exposed my utter ignorance of what grows when. Aren't there runner beans this time of year?" "August," said Megan. "Well, one has them any time in London," said Joanna defensively. "10, sweet fool," I said, "in cold storage on ships from the far-flung limits of empire." "Like ivory, apes, and peacocks?" asked Joanna. "Exactly." I'd rather have peacocks," said Joanna thoughtfully. And y'all, I'm going to have to stop there, so I'm going to get where the lines are starting to go together. I am so sorry. I take vitamins, get my B12 injection. Just need to take naps. Love y'all. I'm working on about a gazillion things all around here. Mostly I go. I timed somebody out on my daughter Kim's. "Oh, Lordy." They know. They said, "Oh, GrannyDee done went to sleep." Look what Joyce DIY Creations gave me. Ain't it pretty? Goes well with my darn good yarn top. Looks kind of crazy with my sweater on, but I'm a little chilly. Look at all these shawls. From Tank, from Elisa. No, Steve, Elisa. This one. And Tank. And I have more. One back there from Joyce, one from Mary in Ireland, some from Sissy Teresa. I'm blessed. Bye, y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. And tomorrow at 3 bells, come on. Come to your grannies. I know some of you will be doing stuff for Mother's Day. I'm not. Having my life as usual. Hope to see whoever can come then. If not, there's always replay. Oh, and I'll be doing a little giveaway. Not sure what I'm giving away yet, but still have these. I think I'm going to give both of these away to somebody. Little baby hats, or you could use them for adult hats. You might have to put more yarn with it. Anyway, trying to get this desk somewhat cleared off. Bye, y'all. Sleep well tonight. Have a lovely Mother's Day tomorrow. If I don't see you tomorrow, if I do, I'll tell you that again. Love you. Bye.